Hi there, and welcome to the Parachain Auctions podcast, hosted by Kraken. I'm Brian Hoffman, crypto platform product lead, and I'm glad you could join me out here on the cutting edge of crypto technologies. On this show, you'll hear from leaders and innovators around the world building parachains on Polkadot and Kusama. Tune in for the insights from the best and brightest about their new projects. Whether this is the first you've heard of parachains or you're a full DeFi degen aficionado, come with us behind the scenes as we explore the technology of the future today. Today we have with us Derek Yoo, who's the CEO at Purestake, and they're hard at work on Moonbeam, a parachain for Polkadot. Welcome, Derek. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background at Purestake?
Kind of, how we came, into building this, this project on Polkadot. Yeah. So, Purestake, we're kind of the company behind the project, Moonbeam. A lot of us here have, the team here, we've worked together before actually. So, a lot of the team here, we have experience from kind of the Web 2 space, building software and technology companies. And, we really, since the beginning of 2019, that's when we kind of started Purestake and kind of entered into the crypto space. I think, our vision was always, even from the start and continues today, that we're heading into this permanently kind of multi-chain kind of environment. And we knew we wanted to work on problems related to cross-chain interoperability. I think when you're in this multi-chain environment, it's kind of, the cross-chain interoperability becomes some of the key kind of challenges to work on. And so I think, with that context, we fell in pretty quickly like into the Polkadot ecosystem, because I think they kind of share that vision, right? They have this kind of multi-chain vision. They're even making it happen with their substrate technology. And, I think we were drawn to Polkadot itself because, it's obviously trying to solve problems related to cross-chain interoperability. It's kind of built into the design of the system itself. So these were quite attractive things for us. So, we kind of said, hey, this is a good place for us to, kind of build our project. And just to maybe give just a quick sense of what Moonbeam is, or what that project is what we've done is we've done an Ethereum implementation in Substrate. So Substrate is the technology framework that one uses to build projects in Polkadot. Mm-hmm. But we kind of feel like we're marrying the best of both worlds here. So we've kind of done this implementation to create this very Ethereum-like environment. So then, as a developer, you can use kind of your familiar Ethereum developer tools to build things, but you're doing it kind of in this in Polkadot. To even give a little bit more color, right? I mean, I think when we started working in Polkadot with Substrate, we realized, hey, this is like really powerful, right? You can build, you can build blockchains, you can build parachains, you can build like these things that are quite complicated to build, and you can do it like in a fraction of the time it would take if you were to do it from scratch. So that's very powerful. But I think at the same time, what we realized is that you're still building a blockchain. So I think even when you're using Substrate, it's like kind of complicated. And I think we realized like, hey, there's going to be a good spot to occupy to offer kind of a more familiar kind of smart contract like developer experience, right? That's what a lot of developers that are working in the space are used to. So that's kind of what we were kind of going after that idea.
Yeah, I certainly think that Moonbeam and Moonriver, on Kusama, are certainly one of the most interesting projects in the space, because it's not throwing away all of the kind of progress that's been made on the Ethereum side and just kind of doing it all from scratch, which I think a lot of other layer ones that have tried to come along and kind of supplant Ethereum have had trouble doing. They just don't, the compatibility, being able to reuse contracts and things like that is going to be really powerful, I think, for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, my take and kind of the take of the team is that I think people tend to pretty dramatically underestimate what it takes to, to really kind of create a new tech stack and get like a whole ecosystem kind of built around it. I mean, it can obviously be done. It takes time though, right? I mean, I think even for this Ethereum tech stack, I mean, people have been kind of at building tools around that tech stack for, 5 years now, basically, right? So, and even then there's like still, complaints and people saying, hey, I wish it was a little bit better and other things. So you realize that I think, building all of these developer tools really takes quite a bit of effort. And I think you kind of see it in the market right now, right? So you see it in the market that I mean, a lot of what we're seeing is, projects are adopting kind of a multi-chain deployment strategy, but specifically it's these like EVM compatible chains that are getting a lot of the traction, right? So, I mean, even right now,
Oh
I would
yeah,
say
yeah,
it's
clearly.
it's a Matic Polygon, it's BSC, and I think it's kind of getting at right what you were saying, that it's like, those environments kind of allow you to use this whole tool set. It's compatible with all of this existing innovation that's happened around like ERC20 and all these
Hmm.
standards. And yeah, I think that's a key reason. And I think it's kind of interesting because I think originally people said it's Ethereum, the network itself, that's going to have this huge network effect. And I think, while that's obviously true to some extent, I think it's more this technology stack that is proven to be the thing that has this strong network effect, and people are actually willing to deploy to other blockchains if they can kind of use this familiar set of tools.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on an interesting point too. It's like Ethereum kind of brought this idea of like, the smart contracts and the specs around some of the token standards and things like that are very easily replicable. Like people can just go ahead and create their own token, and it's very straightforward and simple for developers to get involved, which is not the same case with Bitcoin. I mean, it's infinitely harder to do anything on scripting language of Bitcoin, but I think with that came ICOs in 2017, which a lot of people said, oh, look at this, you're giving people this ripe opportunity to create these investment projects that maybe are not worthwhile or they're not legitimate. But Polkadot seems to go in a different direction to really try to kind of counteract that. And so maybe you can explain a little bit about like how Polkadot and Kusama are working to kind of combat that and really help projects like yours that you know are maybe more serious about what they're doing and like more legitimate initially to raise funds for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost step back and I can comment a little bit just on, the idea behind Polkadot versus kind of Ethereum, right? Like just to, that
Hmm.
might be of interest to people listening. So for me, it's a kind of about where do you draw kind of the abstraction boundary, right? So like what level of abstraction are you kind of operating in? And this is where I was commenting before that a lot of developers like this smart contract layer of abstraction, right? And there's all this tools and technology and knowledge about working with that. But I would say this is where Polkadot is fundamentally different, right? So this substrate framework I talked about that comes along with Polkadot, it's like a much lower level toolkit. So you can basically like go much lower level in terms of customizing and optimizing a blockchain environment. And so I think that is like a powerful thing that is I think is still kind of in the early days of being tapped. So in our case, we used that framework to build this Ethereum like thing. That was our kind of specialized thing that we created. But there's lots of other projects in Polkadot that are creating other kinds of specialized services that you couldn't even necessarily do on like Ethereum, right? I mean, this could be a storage optimized chain, or like a one set optimized for serving up identity, or there's lots of different. I'm particularly interested in these infrastructural chains, and so I think that's a very compelling kind of idea to us, is that that you have these many blockchains, but you can specialize them, right? You can specialize them so that they're purpose built for some particular use. But then, Polkadot provides this kind of networking layer where those specialized services can now be combined or can talk to each other. And so, that's kind of, that's definitely one of the motivations for us to work on Polkadot, is we kind of, yes, we have this ability to customize our environment. We've created this smart contract platform, but it's kind of this ability to be part of this larger network and to tap into and kind of integrate with these other specialized services. That's something that we're, pretty, I think, and we're quite early on that, but that's something that we see driving kind of like a next wave of innovation.
I have a question about what your thoughts are on this scenario. I mean, you guys are kind of creating this like Frankenstein situation, right, where you have like Ethereum EVM kind of stuff on top of Polkadot, and now it's like people can come onto that and start building smart contract applications on top of that. And Ethereum has had a hard time scaling that. Like, how is what you're doing going to be different? I mean, you're not even like the whole chain, right? You're building all of this now on top of just one part of one parachain essentially, which is
Mhm.
part of the whole Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem. Like, how do you guys see that scaling? Like, what makes it different?
Yeah, so well, I mean, I think the whole concept of Polkadot is that each parachain is kind of its own blockchain, right? So like, yes, we are like a kind of a single blockchain in that sense. We're one parachain, but it is a blockchain basically, right? I mean,
Hmm.
under the hood. But the idea of Polkadot is that you can have many of these blockchains. I think that's why they call them parachains, because they're supposed to be like parallel, supposed to kind of stand for parallel execution, right? So you have many. I think that the first goal is to get up to about 100 or so. Um, and that's like one way to scale is basically by having multiple blockchains. And there is a little bit of a nuance here, which I'll explain. That and I think kind of in the here and now, like what we see happening is, I kind of mentioned it before, that you kind of have something that was, let's say, developed on Ethereum, and then people are kind of wholesale taking that, right? They're just taking all the code, everything, even the front end app, and they just take the whole thing and they plop it down kind of somewhere else, right? So it's kind of, I'd call it almost like a ported strategy, right? You kind of take your app that was developed in one place and you make copies of it in multiple other places.
Hmm.
That's kind of let's call it the state of the art right now, but that doesn't really take advantage of something like Polkadot, like its native kind of abilities all that well. What I anticipate happening is that you'll have a new kind of multi-chain application that will span multiple of these specialized services like on Polkadot. So then you can kind of spread yourself. Let's say that you have storage needs, right? I mean, yeah, EVM chains will be up front, right? They're not great at storing large amounts of data, right? I mean, that's not a good place to store
Hmm.
data. It's more compute oriented. But if you combine smart contracts on, let's say, a Moonbeam with like a storage oriented chain, like a Crust, say, like on Polkadot, then you can kind of have this best of both worlds, right? Where you're able to store, you use the storage optimized chain for storage and use the EVM chain, let's say, for compute and kind of presenting kind of things to the user. That's the kind of thing that I think is kind of unique, like use cases that Polkadot enables, right? This kind of ability to fuse multiple specialized blockchains together.
Yeah, I think it makes it really straightforward to do that, and I think it's kind of a new paradigm that most people aren't really thinking about unless you're like really working on this day to day. Like people don't realize where that's going. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. So speaking of just moving applications over, like do you have any big names of apps that are already out there that plan to come over to Moonbeam or Moonriver?
Yeah, I mean, we have a bunch. I mean, I don't even know that I can rattle them off, but I can give you kind of, share with you like a few highlights. Basically, a lot of what we're seeing again is this, kind of like multi-chain deployment strategy targeting EVM chains. And I would say that where we found, quite a bit of traction is within the DeFi sector. So kind of, projects that are on Ethereum, and then they want to get to Polkadot, and I think we're kind of the natural partner for them to do that, because then they can kind of leverage a lot of the already existing code and technology investments they've made, and they can kind of leverage that to have a Polkadot based deployment. And kind of the motivation for those projects is, you can ask the question, why do they even want to get to Polkadot? I think for a lot of them, particularly these DeFi projects, they see the world as, hey, I want to get more users and I want to get more assets so I can increase my TVL, say, right, as one of the key metrics. And this is the thing where like different blockchains now, they have like different users and different assets, right? And in particular in Polkadot, there's a bunch of users and there's all these new assets being created. And there's the relay chain asset itself, like dot, let's say. And so that's a big motivator for people when they're saying, hey, like where is it that I can expand to where I'll increase these numbers, right? I'll increase maybe my my daily active users, or I'll increase my
Mhm.
assets under management. So that's kind of the key motivator. And yeah, I would say that the DeFi projects have been the most aggressive, I would say, to adopt this kind of strategy. They're kind of leading the way. And yeah, we have like a whole DeFi ecosystem that's formed like on Moonriver and Moonbeam, and so we expect kind of a whole DeFi ecosystem to kind of emerge. And yeah, I think, some of the again, there's too many to name, but some of the key kind of folks we're working with are folks like Sushi is a partner. You know, Cream Finance, like for doing like lending and borrowing, and there's a number of different dexes, like IDEX is another order book based dex. We have a number of AMM based dexes, stable coins like Frax, ArcX is another project. Linear Finance is building synthetics platform, so it kind of is a whole. And I think what we realized too is like when you're talking about DeFi, you kind of almost need all of these, because all of them kind of depend on each other. So you can't really be like a DeFi project and then just move over by yourself, because there's all of these, like you need the AMM and you need like stable coins to provide the trading pairs.
Mhm.
You need like a lending and borrowing capability. So I feel like that's one thing we realized is you almost, if you're going to do DeFi, you kind of need to it's a kind of all or nothing. You need to kind of get like all of these people to move over like at once, basically, to have all of the necessary pieces in place.
Yeah, I certainly feel like the work that you all are doing is going to be so beneficial to like a lot of the other parachains as well. It's not just like a self-contained kind of thing because of I think the projects that you'll bring over. I mean, one question I have is like, if you're a project and you're on Ethereum, what why would you think of maybe moving your code to, or also deploying your code on Moonbeam rather than say try and use Matic or some layer two technology on ETH and kind of stay within that ecosystem? Or do you find them completely complementary and, you know, just all part of like a bigger ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I would say that I think that different people look at this in different ways. So there are definitely, I would say, people that look at things through more of I'll call it like an Ethereum centric like mindset, where the problem to them is just one of scalability, right? And if you kind of frame the problem as just one of scalability, well, then one of the layer twos you know, might make sense as the place to kind of do your multi chain expansion. I think though that like what we're seeing more and more of is that it kind of goes down back to this like users and assets, right? So, you know, as there's just kind of like more activity, more users, and more assets like on these other chains, then you're just kind of like if by staying like with a strictly Ethereum only strategy, you're just kind of not addressing those parts of the market basically. And you can see that there are different chains that are kind of like take something like Binance Smart Chain, right? I mean that's like an example of like that's kind of servicing a segment like of users that just want these like cheap fees, right? Like and you can see that yes, I mean I know that there's some people on Ethereum who might say, well, it's not decentralized enough, but there's some set of users that that's not
They
like
don't care.
they don't care basically, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is the kind of thing where there's as choices are emerging, then people are kind of it's kind of suiting like different like user bases and different assets and like different chains kind of thing. And I expect to see more of that, right? As there's just more, as toolkits like Substrate are around, and it's just easier to create chains that are specialized to different purposes. I think it's not like a thing where it's gonna. I know some people say like, oh, things are going to collapse back to like just two or three. I don't think so, right? I kind of see a
Hmm.
future of like many different kinds of chains, and the ability to interoperate between them is kind of the key thing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the fundraising aspect of it, which I think a lot of our listeners are probably going to be most curious in, is the auctions around the Parachain slots. So there's upwards of 100 projects or so that are going to be looking at doing this. They all can choose their own strategy. We know that we have the on-chain capability to raise funds. I mean, what has been your strategy in terms of getting your community to support you?
Yeah, and one comment I'd make just as people might not be aware, but there are kind of a few different entities involved on our side. So we do have I'm with Purestake, but we do have a Moonbeam Foundation. The Moonbeam Foundation is non for profit that's kind of going to have like long term kind of stewardship responsibilities over our network, and they're the ones that are kind of running some of the programs I'll be talking about. But yeah, I think that obviously this auction mechanism makes sense in I kind of we like the idea of using the market basically to decide where these scarce resources on Kusama and Polkadot will get allocated. So I think that makes a lot of sense to us. Of course, it can make it a little stressful if you're a project because you need to
Yeah.
you don't have a shoe in kind of guarantee to like be in one of these spots. But I think that's we understand the logic and support it now. Um, as we're kind of heading into some of these first slots being made available on Kusama, we do see obviously ourselves and a lot of other folks are kind of gearing up efforts to occupy one of these slots. Well, we along with many other teams are and our foundation are pursuing this idea of a crowd loan. So a crowd loan is a way that you can kind of get your community to help support you as a project like into occupying like one of these initial slots. And so, yeah, I think that pretty much many of the, if not most, almost all of the teams that I've talked to, we have obviously good kind of relationships with a lot of these teams working in the same ecosystem are kind of planning on one of these crowd loans. And yeah, I think it's just a cool idea that Parity came up with to kind of have this ability for the community to kind of express itself, right? On who they think the project should be that are occupying these scarce resources like on the relay chain. And yeah, we obviously want to be one of those projects that occupy like one of these initial there's an initial 5 slots are going to be released in the coming weeks here on Kusama to start. So
Yeah, yeah. So as the time this is being recorded, it hasn't launched yet. So it'll be interesting to see how the first few slot auctions go and who wins them. And I'm sure there'll be some teams that'll be disappointed that they don't get into the first or second one. But I mean, I guess with upwards of 100 slots or something, I'm sure the people that want to get in there will eventually get into those slots. But I don't know. I mean, it will be interesting to see just how much it costs to get into one, and what happens from there. Hopefully, it goes smoothly. So for our clients, our customers are going to be able to participate in these auctions through Kraken, and I think obviously the other half of that is, well, we're willing to lock up some of our funds to support your project, but like what for you guys, like what is your strategy for building out the para assets afterwards, and distribution, and how that works? Maybe you can go over that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, and then I'll just mention again that this is the Moonbeam Foundation is kind of running some of these programs, not the company I work for,
Yeah.
Purestake, but for the Moonbeam Foundation, the crowd loan that is being put forth. I think for to start with, obviously we're focused on the Moonriver launch, which is the launch on Kusama. Things happen first on Kusama, like kind of in the Polkadot ecosystem, and I think Kusama has the spirit of being like let's say kind of a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more experimental, a little bit more community led, and so we're trying. I think that kind of our collaboration with our foundation, we kind of came up with some ideas that we felt matched with that philosophy or spirit. And so for the Moonriver deployment, it's actually the case that in terms of the token kind of allocation supply, it's there's no VCs, even like us as a team, like are not like not receiving any of the tokens. The only way that you can participate in the network is through this crowd loan, or through being a collator, or through kind of providing infrastructure services to the chain. And we have the foundation is running a crowd loan where it's put up 30% of the network as a reward for people that helped support us initially into this first 48-week slot, right? So occupying a slot for close to a year. And I think there's a number of other programs that will come kind of after that, but that's kind of the initial one that is being run. And the idea is that if there's a successful crowd loan campaign, and Moonriver occupies one of these initial slots, then as a contributor, you would have kind of a right to like a ratable portion of this like 30% rewards bucket. So depending on how much KSM is kind of collected total, it's kind of your contribution percent of that total would be the percentage of this rewards bucket that you would be able to claim over the course of this 48-week slot occupancy.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about. I mean, what can you do with the tokens? I mean, what can you do with the river tokens? What will people be able to use those for?
Yeah. For our Moonriver or Mover tokens, like basically like the way to think of them is this: that part of the utility of the token is that they serve the same function that ETH does on Ethereum, right? So if you have ETH on Ethereum, it's obviously being used to meter kind of smart contract execution from a gas perspective. So, as part of our effort to just be as compatible as possible with the existing kind of Ethereum environment, we have the same concept of gas to meter, to provide security basically around smart contract execution, and to figure out, okay, well, which transactions should be included or not included in a particular block. So that functions the same. So like you have kind of the same base utility as ETH on Ethereum. There are some other things that that the Mover tokens also do, though. So one of those is that there is a full on-chain governance system. I think this is something we're implementing. This is something that's also implemented by Polkadot and Kusama themselves, the relay chains. And so we're fully bought in and believers in this kind of idea of put all of the governance on chain, right, including upgrades, including everything, and then then there's kind of no, it just kind of provides clarity, right? It's kind of, sunshine is the best disinfectant kind of idea. It's like you just put it all on chain, and then you may not like the outcome that happened, but at least it's kind of clear, and it's, it's kind of weighted by tokens. And so we're believers in that, and we'll be, practicing what we preach there, in terms of on-chain governance. And there is also a staking component that's obviously not on Ethereum, at least not yet, as far as ETH1 is concerned. And so that is something also that's an additional kind of function that we have on our chain, that you can, as a token holder, you can stake. That allows you to select who's going to be a collator. The collators on our chain are the people kind of that the nodes that are responsible for producing blocks. So there's a kind of a system that we've created that powers that whole thing.
Yeah, this is it's crazy. I'm just thinking in my head how many new ERC-20s and stuff are going to be built on top of Moonbeam, and there may be a day maybe Binance will clone Moonbeam and create Binance Moonbeam Smart Chain or something, and then we'll be really down in the weeds. But yeah, that's really awesome. I think
Yeah.
you know a lot of the very top projects in the Polkadot space have like really great value propositions, but I think this is a really great one. I mean, it's clear that Ethereum is winning the smart contract game right now, and being able to reuse that code and also expand it into like some new areas is going to be super powerful for the people that get involved. So that's really exciting. Um,
Yeah, I think just to add on that, I mean, this is definitely one of the things that, like, obviously we've been focused a lot on this Ethereum compatibility and being able to have these projects be able to deploy. But again, I go back to the thing that we have that I think other chains that are more standalone don't have is that we're part of Polkadot. And so
yeah,
I'll give you an example, right? So like one of the use cases that a lot of the teams we're working with are quite interested in, I mentioned, is this access to assets. So let's say that you have like a relay chain asset like Dot, right, that people want to access. Well, Dot lives on a different part of Polkadot, right? But there is going to be a way where like users can basically move Dot onto Moonbeam. And so we're using kind of the Polkadot native transfer mechanisms to enable that, right? So it can move to Moonbeam. But when it's on Moonbeam, we're going to represent it as like a special precompile. So for those who don't know, precompiles are kind of like these built-in smart contracts, right, that you can have on Ethereum. So kind of when Dot is on Moonbeam, it's going to have this. It's going to be this special kind of precompile, but the precompile will look like an ERC-20. So then, from a wallet perspective, from MetaMask, from the perspective of all these other protocols, it's like, oh, I'm just working with an ERC-20. But under the hood, it's powered by this like Polkadot native thing, right? It's this Polkadot native asset that's kind of
yeah.
just appearing on Moonbeam as an ERC-20, but you can then move it away. You can move it on to some other Polkadot parachain. So I think that strategy we're going to do a bunch of, and I think that's going to be pretty cool because we're kind of then combining kind of this Polkadot like ability to network and move things around and kind of do cross chain things, but marry that with kind of this existing Ethereum technology stack that people are so used to, especially things like MetaMask, right? I think where
Yeah.
that's just the thing that's installed everywhere already. So it's like the point of least friction to try to get users to to use it.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge benefit that will like grease the wheels of adoption for sure. Um, yeah, I think and it'll be interesting to see. We'll probably see a whole generation of users that just live within perhaps the Moonbeam ecosystem, and they're not really even familiar about some of these other networks that exist. I mean, we've seen that with the Binance Smart Chain and all the things over there like Pancake Swap. I mean, people live over there, and perhaps you'll have a similar situation over here. So I guess I have like one more final question for you. Is like, well, where do you see all this going in the next year and beyond? I mean, where is it going? Where would you like to see yourselves this time next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, obviously, like the here and now is for us is to get these networks launched, right? There's a Kusama network, our Moonriver network launched. There's our Moonbeam network to launch on Polkadot. So I mean, there are, I would say that the very very short term is filled with practicalities from our perspective of just making those things happen. And we've been working on the tech for this for some time now. I mean, and so kind of pulling all those pieces together. I mean, that's been great to see, and that's something that's going to be our focus for the very kind of the next few months, let's say. But I think where I see things beyond that, and where we're starting to kind of think ahead is just this bootstrapping of this whole DeFi ecosystem. I mean, that's the thing where I really see like a big opportunity, just based on the projects we're working with already. That yeah, I think it's going to be let's call it like what we see on BSC or even what we see on Polygon these days. That there's just an entire DeFi ecosystem that is forming on Moonriver and Moonbeam. And yeah, I think that then there might be other questions like, okay, are there like liquidity bootstrapping or other kind of programs that like that our foundation might be able to run to help facilitate some of the growth of that ecosystem. But that's the thing that I really, I guess, I'm most excited about in kind of when you go out to the, let's call it like the 6 month time frame and kind of a little bit beyond that. But then when I go out to even the longer term, I think I really would go back to this theme of like, I think that Polkadot is unique, right, in its ability to kind of have these like specialized blockchains and to like network them together. And I just think that that's something that just doesn't exist anywhere else. And I really do believe that that's going to drive, that's going to drive kind of like a next generation of applications that are kind of, I call them sometimes native multi-chain, right? So they're kind of like composed of powered by multiple blockchains, but they're kind of appear as one application. And so that's kind of when you go out to like, let's say the 1 to 2 year time frame, that's kind of the things I'm most excited about.
Yeah, it's certainly a powerful vision. Ever since I heard Gavin talk about it, years ago, it sounded like almost like a pipe dream, but here it is. We're almost there, and it'll be really, really exciting to see it actually working. I know how it is to have a software community and people itching to try it, and then finally get it out there for the people to use and see it being, working. It's awesome. So where can our listeners go to find out a little bit more about what's going on with Purestake, Moonriver, Moonbeam, all those
Yeah.
things going on?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously there's a couple websites I'd mention. I mean, one to just learn about the project is moonbeam.network. And there's, especially if you're a developer, there's an extensive documentation site there with tons of examples and integrations. But there is also the foundation website, moonbeam.foundation, that has a bunch of other information about things like the crowd loan and other things. So I would encourage users to check both of those things out.
Awesome, great. And there's always one final thing we do on this podcast at the end. So the official slogan of Kusama is to expect chaos. So we ask all of our guests to give us a chaos score, 0 to 10. How chaotic do you think this is going to be?
That's a good question. I mean, 0 to 10, I would put it at least at 5. I'll be specific, right? So I think that, we've been working on kind of parachains, and Moonbeam is a parachain for a long time now. We had our testnets in September. I think there's a lot of like it's great. There's a lot of enthusiasm. There's a lot of like newer teams, and I think that one thing we've learned is that there is actually ways where you can kind of back yourself into a corner, right? So you can do things where you're like, oh, like I just locked myself out of the apartment and I don't have the keys anymore. So
Yeah.
I think that I wouldn't be surprised if we see at least like 1 or 2 kind of apartment lockouts that happen. And then the question would be, I think those people will have to, the landlord in this case is like the Kusama council. They'll probably have to go to the council and kind of say, please, like, let me have a copy of the keys, like kind of things, like get back into my apartment, like this kind of thing. So, I mean, that would be chaos. That would be a little bit of
that's
Kusama
only a
chaos to me.
5. That's only a 5. That sounds more like a
maybe a 7. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, either way, we'll be excited to watch it. I get a seat from the non-developer perspective, so it'll be a little less stressful for us. But overall, well, we wish the team luck, and I think it's going to be a big launch for everybody involved. And we hope to hear more about it and see the launch officially go out very shortly. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate the support, guys. So.
Thanks again to our guest, Derek. It was great learning more about Moonbeam, which is their Polkadot parachain, and Moonriver, which is on Kusama. Make sure you like, subscribe, and review us on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll be sure to bring you along as we get a backstage pass to the world of parachain auctions. Remember, you can always learn more about all things crypto by going to kraken.com/learn. Until next time, I'm Brian Hoffman, and this has been the Parachain Auctions Podcast, hosted by Kraken. This content is not financial or investment advice. All interviews and discussions are opinions only. Kraken does not endorse the accuracy of this content. None of the following information should be construed as a recommendation to support any specific parachain project or to participate in parachain auctions in general. See our terms of service for more information.